If you're looking for the best multicam live stream setup for podcasting, don't buy any cameras until you can answer one question. Are you going to edit your own show or hire an editor? OBSBOT sent us their entire camera lineup so we could stress test them in real podcast workflows. And what we found is that your answer to that question changes everything about which setup you should buy. So we're gonna build 3 complete multicam setups together, from $600 to almost $5,000, and show you exactly what you get at each level. Not just the gear, but the actual workflow. Here's what OBSBOT sent us: the Tiny 2 Lite, the Tiny 2, the Tail Air, and the Tail 2. 4 cameras ranging from about $160 to about $1,200. We tested every combination we could think of, different workflows, different budgets, different levels of complexity, and we landed on 3 setups that actually make sense. But we're not just gonna talk about all of these setups. We're gonna build each one step by step, show you exactly how to configure the software, and then actually go live so you can see it all working in real time. And at the end, we're putting all 4 cameras side by side, same scene, same lighting, so you can see the actual quality difference for yourself before you spend a dime. A quick note, we're not gonna dive into microphones or lighting today, so if you want breakdowns of lights and microphones for video podcasting and live streaming, just comment lights or mics, and we'll send you resources here for that. Also, if you want our complete resource guide with all of the gear links and everything that we're gonna cover in this video, comment live stream and we'll send you the resource. And a quick thanks to OBSBOT for sponsoring this video for you and sending us their full camera lineup. We've wanted to do this for a while. We're always on the hunt for the best plug and play cameras for our creators. So let's see what these cameras can really do and start with setup number 1. DIY multicam. 3 cameras, 1 computer, no switcher. This setup is perfect for beginners and those on a budget. We're gonna use 3 OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite cameras at about $160 each. So that's roughly about $480, plus a 4K capable USB hub, about $120. We're gonna use the Amazon Basics Thunderbolt 4 docking station. So the total for the setup is about $600. Again, comment live stream and I'll send you the links for these things. This is a true 3-camera multicam setup using the free OBS Studio. So 3 cameras actually giving you 3 real angles, not faking it with digital zoom. The camera switching will happen inside OBS using scenes, and you switch between them using the up and down arrows on your keyboard. Then we send an OBS virtual camera into Riverside for your live stream and to record your live stream at high quality so we can edit it later. But here's the trade-off. Whatever camera switching you do to your live guests will be printed, you could say, onto your recording. So it's stuck. You can't undo that camera switching later in the edit. But if you are your own editor, that's actually a feature, not a bug, because you're making creative decisions in real time so that you don't have to edit them in post. But switching cameras while hosting and podcasting is kind of like playing guitar and singing at the same time. It takes a brain that can handle multitasking. And many times I've completely forgotten to switch the camera to the person who's speaking and just leave it to the person who's not talking for long periods of time. That's just part of the game when you're DIYing and when you're getting familiar with this process. Now, if you want to upgrade the same workflow to the next step and improve your image quality even more, then you can swap out your Tiny 2 Lites for the regular Tiny 2 cameras. Those come in at about $300 each instead of $160. Or you could get 2 Tiny 2s for your close-up shots and stay with the Tiny 2 Lite for your wide angle. So all of the OBSBOT cameras are PTZ cameras or pan tilt zoom cameras. They are also on a gimbal, so they're very stabilized. And the Tiny 2 Lites are no exception to this. In this way, you can get the exact shot and composition you want by panning and tilting, and all of the cameras also have really smart gesture control. They'll even follow you around if you want them to. Really fun cameras to play with. Compared to the light versions, the Tiny 2s have larger sensors, better dynamic range, and cleaner image processing. So the workflow is identical, just better ingredients. This setup is perfect for DIY creators who are editing their own content, solo podcasters getting started with multicam, and really anyone prioritizing simplicity over post-production flexibility. Let's take a look at setup 2, Creator Multicam. For this setup, we're pairing 2 OBSBOT Tail Air cameras at about $500 each. So that's $1,000 for your close-ups. And this time we're gonna use 1 Tiny 2 at about $300 for our wide shot in the middle of our host and co-host. And we'll pair all of those up with the same USB hub around that $120 range. This puts us at the approximate $1,400, $1,500 price range. Now, why would you spend about $1,000 more when the workflow is basically the same?
Because the Tail Airs are beautiful little babies.
Have probably become a top contender for me for a beginner's video podcasting camera. They have a larger sensor than the Tiny series, more light gathering and better dynamic range, and cleaner processing, especially if you're in less than perfect lighting. The Tail Airs still use a digital zoom, but it's a much cleaner cleaner zoom compared to the Tiny series. The Tail Air has that same PTZ functionality, only with the Tail Air, you can connect the camera through your Wi-Fi to a smartphone or an iPad and actually control it that way, which is a huge selling feature for this camera compared to the Tiny series. And here we're gonna use the Tiny 2 for the wide shot instead of dropping 500 on a third Tail Air. Most of your show is going to be on the close-ups anyways, so the wide shot is your reset between segments. So this is the I care about quality, but I'm still doing everything myself tier. You're not changing your workflow, you're just feeding it with better ingredients. So this is best for DIY creators who care about image quality, podcasters wanting a more polished look, and shows that need better close-ups without hardware switchers. By the way, if you're finding this helpful and you want to go even deeper, we host free live events on our podcasting platform, Podcast Your Way. You can sign up for free by going to podcastyourway.com. The events are free to attend, and you get face-to-face time with us and other creators. I'll also drop the link for Podcast Your Way in the description. And now let's move on to setup 3, Studio Multicam. Full control in post-production. And here we're pulling out the bad boys, 2 of the OBSBOT Tail 2 cameras for about $1,200 each. So your 2 close-up cameras are gonna be $2,400. And then we're gonna use one of the Tail Air cameras at $500 for our wide shot. And in this setup, instead of the USB hub, we're gonna use the YOLOBOX Extreme camera switcher, which will probably blow your mind with its features. And this comes in at about $2,000 US. So this is how we get to that approximate $5,000. Now this setup is very different and really at the top professional level. For one thing, it is the only setup in this video with true optical zoom. The Tail 2 has 5x optical zoom. The lens actually physically zooms, so you don't lose any image quality. In this way, you also get a more natural, very subtle, blurred out background, really sharp image quality. We're really stepping up into that professional, buttery look. This allows you to get tighter framing from farther away, cleaner compositions, no resolution loss, which really allows the cameras to stay completely out of frame while getting those beautiful close-ups. Now, the YOLOBOX Extreme is a hardware switcher. So you plug in all of your cameras into the YOLOBOX Extreme now, and this handles your switching, but it also records each camera source separately to a flash drive in full 4K. So we're not just gonna get the switched output, but you're getting those 3 individual video files. Other switchers like the Rodecaster Video, which we've featured in a video here, only record at 1080p. The YOLOBOX does this at 4K, and that's a big deal for editors. So here's the real payoff of this setup. Your editor will get 3 separate 4K video files and high quality audio that never touched the internet. So they have complete freedom to do the camera switching in post-production however they want. They can split your live stream into episodes, create vertical video clips in full quality. Your live audience sees your manual camera switching, but your editor has full control to make the final product completely different and better. Now, this setup only makes sense if you're working with an editor or you're ready to hire one. A professional editor who understands multicam and audio treatment isn't optional at this level. It's the whole point. You're not just buying cameras, you're buying your time back. An editor can spend 6 to 12 hours a week turning one live stream into multiple pieces of content, clips, episodes, highlights, and thumbnails. If you're doing all of this yourself, you're not even a creator. You're an editor who occasionally creates. And as I mentioned, we will still send the output from the YOLOBOX into Riverside FM to live stream to our audience. We love this because we can still connect with guests remotely, invite them to our live streams, and that gives us high quality recordings of our guests. It also gives us a backup recording of our camera switch at a 4K quality. So you get the best of both worlds. Professional hardware switching with cloud-based flexibility. So this setup is really best for creators who are working with professional editors or teams that are focused on repurposing and scale, and podcasts treating live streams as production assets. Okay, what do you say we actually build this thing? Now, we only have one of the each OBSBOT cameras, so for our demonstration, we're using the Tail 2, the Tail Air, and the Tiny 2 together. But the process is exactly the same, whatever configuration of cameras you're using. We're gonna use the same configuration with 2 different setups that we're gonna walk you through. First, we're gonna go through the whole OBS Studio USB hub setup. This is the manual camera switching for our DIYers from the first 2 setups. Then we'll finish off by plugging everything into the YOLOBOX Extreme, and we'll take a look at using a professional camera switcher. So to start with, we're gonna crack open the OBS Studio, and we're gonna download the OBSBOT Center app to control our cameras. Then we're gonna put the OBSBOT Center app and the OBS Studio app right next to each other and get everything running in 4K, connect it all to Riverside so that you're all ready to go live. And like I said, this will cover the workflow of setup 1 and setup 2, any configuration of cameras you wanna use with the USB hub. Once you've got this down, you can switch your cameras live with just your keyboard. So let's get into it.
sexy.
So herein lies some tricky decisions, my friend, and one of them is whether or not you want your computer to be in the shot with you. Now, for many of us DIYing our live stream, we gotta have the computer in the shot. We wanna connect with guests, we wanna share our screen, so it's okay, and our audience is fine seeing us playing with the computer during our live stream and our podcasts. But for other styles of shows, you might not wanna have your computer in the shot. And then, as I mentioned, use a wireless keyboard or something, and then you just have a wireless keyboard here as you're doing your podcasting thing. Maybe I could ask my camera woman to sit in the couch. Look at my camera woman, guys. I would recommend if you're brand new to cameras and you're brand new to kind of photography and stuff, and you kind of feel overwhelmed by things like color balance and exposure and white balance and autofocus, to just keep the things as they come with the OBSBOT cameras in auto. But I like also to choose to keep those things manual, and you can play with those things here in the parameters. You can always choose whether to keep everything in auto mode. As you get more comfortable with your cameras though, you're gonna get a better result if you slip things into manual, take them out of auto, and find a proper way to adjust your exposure and your white balance and match the three cameras together. And that can take some tinkering and some playing around with, but you'll get there. Okay, so the first step with any OBSBOT camera is to download the OBSBOT Center app that you can use with any computer that you're using. Here on my Mac Pro, you see I've got the OBSBOT Center here. I love this app because it works as a little sidebar, and from here you can control any of the cameras that you have plugged into your computer, and you can also adjust the settings, so the pan, the tilt, and the zoom, but you can also adjust the color and the exposure. You can decide whether or not you want to do manual settings or auto settings and get your shot to look the best that it can in your specific scenario. Notice here we see the camera Tiny 2, and under that we have all of the controls. I can move the camera around, I can zoom in on the camera, and I can also preview what the camera is seeing here. And if you really want to get the preview window even bigger so that you can use your computer screen as a monitor as you build your shot here, there's a full screen option by clicking here, and it takes up the full screen, and there's the shot we're getting from the OBSBOT camera. And you can full screen it, but we still want to be able to control the camera, so I'm just going to make this bigger. You could do something like this. So now we have the full screen preview, and we also have our controls over here. But what I like to do at this point is actually already get set up in OBS, and then I use OBS as the monitor. And we're going to be using OBS with all three of our cameras to set up our virtual camera switching hack. OBS is an easy download, and it's free to download. And now in OBS, what we're going to do is we're going to apply or build a scene with each one of our cameras. And we build scenes along the left-hand side here in the scenes panel. These scenes are perhaps what makes OBS so fun for live streamers, because within a scene, you combine different sources or different things that you have plugged in your computer, and you can create different combinations of cameras and microphones, and you can even add titles and cards and anything you can imagine for your live stream. OBS allows you to do that and build it into its own unique scene. Here we're keeping things simple, and we're just gonna give each web camera its own scene. So this first scene here, I'm gonna click on it and I'm gonna rename this. You could rename it the name of the camera, or in this case, I'm gonna say wide. So this is gonna be my wide shot. Now in the panel next to the scenes panel, we see sources. Here, if we click on the plus button, we can add a new video capture device source. And the video capture device here is where we can say Tiny 2 and select OK. And now here is where it's asking us to actually select the device. When I click in that drop-down menu, OBSBOT Tiny 2 Stream Camera appears, and there it is. Now I can just say OK here, and you'll see that now it has appeared in OBS. So this is perfect. We can see that the Tiny 2 is plugged into our computer, and it's being sent to OBS properly. But there are a few settings that you need to make sure that we adjust in OBS so that you make sure that you maintain that 4K quality when you're recording and when you're spitting out your virtual camera. And everything we do, we want to keep it in 4K. I mean, that's the point of these OBSBOT cameras, right? And the first thing is to make sure that your canvas size is actually set up to a 4K dimension. So when you click on the OBS, the drop-down menu appears and you can choose preferences. So from the settings menu, there's a menu along the left-hand side with all of your subcategories. One of them is video. From that video, notice we have base canvas resolution. I have 3840 x 2160 typed in here, and how I did that was actually just typing it in, because it won't actually show up from the drop-down menu. You just type in those numbers. And then we want to make sure that the output and scaled resolution also says the same thing, and then you can say okay. And now our whole canvas, the whole operation here in OBS is going to record in 4K. Now we can start a virtual camera when we're ready, and that virtual camera will be in 4K. And in this way, we can record locally onto our computer before the footage ever touches the internet of your live stream. And so you could plug in a flash drive to your computer and create a folder where you back up all of your live streams. That can be a really great practice to increase the quality of your edits in post-production. And so another place in OBS that you're going to want to be aware of, again, from the OBS drop-down menu, we click on Preferences to bring up that same settings window, is going to be under the Output category. And from the Output category, if we come all the way down, notice we have Recording. Here's where you also have your streaming settings, but we're not really going to use OBS to stream. We're just going to use OBS to set up a virtual camera. You can choose a recording path, which is just saying, what folder do you want to put your files in? I'm going to change this by clicking on Browse. I'll choose my desktop, and then I'll create a new folder on my desktop. I'll just call it something that makes sense to me. How about live stream recordings? And that way I have a folder on my desktop called live stream recordings, but you can make the same folder on a flash drive, like I said, and just send all of your files there. And here is what's really exciting about using OBS to record in this way, is you have different options for recording quality. If you click in here, look, the very highest one is called tremendously large file size. This is how you get the true highest quality that you can out of your web cameras, which is kind of amazing, but as it says, it really big file sizes. So I usually keep mine in indistinguishable quality and just generate large file sizes myself. Now we can say, okay, and we're all set up. OBS is going to work perfectly for us to record and also to use as a virtual camera, which we'll be sending later to Riverside to actually live stream. So now that I have my monitor set up, now I can go through the process of making adjustments to my camera here and get this wide shot exactly how I like. We're gonna set up the wide shot first before the two close-up shots, because by setting up the wide shot first, we ensure that our close-up cameras never enter into the frame of the wide shot. That's why I always start with the wide shot. You ready? Okay. Okay, camera number 1, complete. Okay, so now we basically just rinse and repeat this process in OBS and create a new scene and apply each of our individual webcams to that scene. So now I have camera number 1 into my USB hub and camera number 2 into my USB hub. Let's set up a new scene in OBS. Again, we click the plus button here, and we'll call this scene Stephen, because this is going to be my camera. And we'll create a new source. Again, the plus button, video capture device. We'll type in tail air, because I get to use the tail air on my Cara, because I'm importante. And then under device from the drop-down menu, now we can see tail air camera. And look at that! And Veronica's in there again, my camera woman. And now I can start adjusting the settings, as you'll see here, directly from the OBSBOT Center application. And so we are going to keep all of the settings on auto for this illustration. And you'll notice from this drop-down menu here in the OBSBOT Center, you can now see 2 cameras. We have the Tiny 2 and the Tail Air. And now, as a good rule of thumb, a good way to balance between the 2 shots is whoever is on the left side of your wide shot, keep them a little more towards the left side of their close-up shot, and vice versa, whoever's on the right side, keep them a little more on the right side. So in our wide shot, you'll see that I'm actually more over to the left side of the shot, even though I'm on the right side of the couch here. And so here we want to keep Stephen's cuerpo over more to the left side of the shot. I think this is looking pretty good, actually. I don't know, what do you guys, let me know. Do you like the way I framed this in the comments? But we have, this is my shot here, and notice how I'm more over to the left side. And the more over to the left side I get, kind of the more natural it is. Because look, now when I turn towards Veronica, it makes sense, right? You know what I'm looking toward. So that looks pretty good. I could decide to zoom in and out, but check it out. Now that I have these 2 shots set up, when I go over to my scenes panel in OBS, I can use the up and down arrow on my keyboard, and I go from the wide
to my shot. Pretty cool. So now we just got to repeat this process with Veronica, and boy, am I excited, because for Veronica's shot, we get to use the king of all webcams, the Tail 2.
I know you want to kiss this camera. He's cute. I mean, come on, this is like R2-D2. I think Luke Skywalker had some kind of a nickname for R2-D2, didn't he? I don't know, okay? Don't get mad at me, I'm not a Star Wars nerd. Look, not every camera person and content creator needs to like Star Wars that much, all right? Jeez. Look at all these fancy outputs. These ones right here, we have a charge, sort of the universal symbol for charging. And then this is kind of the symbol for through, if I'm not mistaken, and that kind of is implying that this is how we would send this output as a web camera. So just like we did with the Tail Air, with the Tail 2 here, we're gonna need to set this up as a UVC, or put it into UVC mode so that we can use the USB output. And to do that the first time, you'll actually have to connect this to your computer through your Wi-Fi. And actually the process is really easy. So once you get it connected to your computer through Wi-Fi, then just go into the device settings in the OBSBOT Center app. Under the device settings, you'll find output media and change it into UVC mode, and you'll be good to go. So now that we've done that, I can get the shot set up for Veronica here.
We've got to find out what Luke Skywalker calls R2-D2. Look, I'm too lazy to ChatGPT that. Can you drop that in the comments, guys? Okay, so now I've got my camera in that UVC mode, as I mentioned, and from the drop-down list, I see the 3 cameras that I have plugged in, the Tiny 2, the Tail Air, and the Tail 2. You'll see this with any configuration of cameras that you have plugged in to your USB hub or to your computer, and I can get the same shot, but we'll need to set up a new scene in OBS. So let's set up a Veronica scene. Again, we'll press the plus button and we'll say Veronica. And in her scene, we need to add a new video source. So we'll say video capture device, and we'll call this one Tail 2. I don't know if you've watched our previous videos, if you've noticed, but Veronica always gets the priority of the best camera. That's just, you know, when you're the best looking of the two, you get the best camera. Okay, now we come here and we say OBSBOT Tail 2 camera. And there it is. In our experiments with this, when you first pop open this camera, it's just like, whoa. But now, just like we did before, Veronica's sitting in position, so I can start zooming in and get her shot. Just know that as you start to get past the 2x zoom, you will start to see your image soften, and a little bit of your image quality will become compromised because you're working with a digital zoom there. Versus the Tail 2 does an optical zoom, which means it's actually the physical lens moves like a professional lens on a photography camera, which is pretty amazing. We might struggle here a little bit. Remember, in our wide shot, Veronica's off to the right side. So we want to subtly balance her to the right side here as we're setting up this shot. Let's see here. Okay, and then from here now, we can start moving this around. And we can kind of match the zoom angle, right? So we could sort of look at my body here, and we're kind of doing the waist up. You can see the tops of my legs. So we would do the same for Veronica. We'd see the tops of her legs, make sure that her head size is about the same as mine. So we can zoom in a little bit more on her. And remember, now we want to get her off to the right side. So that's a little more balanced. And you could just put her subtly off to the right side. She doesn't have to go all the way off to the right side. And that's looking pretty good. Now, when I'm in my spot here, then you just kind of see my arm occasionally, but that's okay too. And if you want, you could always zoom in a little bit more to cut your other host out of the shot. And we can refine some things here. And now we have Veronica's shot. We have Stephen's shot. Oh, and in my shot, see, I see Veronica's face. So I maybe don't want that in this shot. So just like I zoomed in on Veronica, now that the two of us are sitting here, I can switch my camera over in the OBSBOT Center, go back to the Tail Air. There's my camera. Now we can zoom in on me a little bit more. If your co-host is getting in the shot too much for you, for your liking and your taste, you could also move the position of the camera, because I have the camera quite over to that side. So actually, if I were to move the camera a little bit into the other direction, actually a little bit more back to where we have now our other camera as well, that will naturally, Veronica's angle by the angle that she's sitting in, she won't really get into the shot. And this is pretty good. Okay, and then, ooh, yeah, it's looking nice. So I'm gonna get comfortable and actually kind of pretend I'm podcasting here. Hey, and what do you think? Now I'm not as off to the left as I should probably be. What's cool about this now is the computer's starting to disappear even more, and it's not really even a focal point in the shot anymore, which I think is nice. Don't you think that's nice? And then we come over to Veronica. Ooh. Now you can see at this point, this is where I'm such a perfectionist that I have to start playing with the colors of the cameras, because Veronica just looks so much more tan.
I'm orange.
You're like tan and orange, and you look way better than me. And it's because I had this camera in our previous experience, or our previous experiments. I have this camera set up in manual modes. She's set in a custom white balance. I'm gonna go ahead and say auto. Ooh, there we go, right? Now they look a little more even. Of course, I'm kind of a little more blown out. And that's also because Veronica doesn't have auto exposures. So I'll show you really quickly how I set up a manual custom white balance. I recommend this because you'll notice that the camera is going to constantly be fluctuating a little bit as things move around and your environment changes. And that can be kind of distracting, and it doesn't look as professional. Professional videographers and photographers would never use auto white balance. They would always get the white balance themselves. Now this you'll have to kind of do what Veronica calls al ojo, or by the eye, and just kind of pick a number in your custom temperature that's good for you. For us, I'm gonna choose 48 here. But notice if I go all the way down, it gets really blue. If I go all the way up, it gets really orange. And sometimes going all the way to one side or the other kind of clues you into what you like. So right here, for example, I'm liking that. Like that actually looks like my skin tone right here. And where's it at? And then you could look at the number. Oh, it's about 45. Let's do 47, 48. We'll get a little more warm with this look. And then what we can do is get turn off the auto exposure too. Auto exposure is going to constantly be adding or taking away light based off of the camera's intelligence. So instead, if we turn off auto exposure, it'll be stuck in its exposure. Now here, a tip for getting the right exposure is to turn the ISO up and down until it's totally blown out. If you go all the way down, maybe it gets too dark for your liking. When you turn it up and you start to see these little spots on your face, that's when you know it's way too bright. And so you want to get it down and maybe kind of, look at what the number is. The 200 ISO is good in this case. Maybe even that 100 would be too little. Now the shutter speed will also increase or decrease the light. If I go up in the number, I'm actually going down in the exposure because it's a fraction, the number. So here it's 1/200th, right? But a 200 shutter speed is, I just call it a 200, is getting too dark. Now, if you go too low with the shutter speed, what you start to notice is a little bit of motion blur and not as much detail in motion. So you have, my hand is a little blurry there, but when I come up with the shutter speed, my hand's not as blurry. You see it moving a little bit better. So we want to strike this balance. You kind of have to do it by eye, but what's cool about doing it manual this way is you can now balance the different cameras to look more like each other by playing with these parameters until you get them. And in doing this, you will have a more professional, stable setup. And the OBSBOT Center will remember these settings that you use, and you can set it once and forget it once you get all of your 3 cameras set up really nice. So now let's go take a look at Veronica's camera and see how our color is looking better. It's looking better. But what if we go and put her color temperature into that 48 that I chose for myself? So let's take her out of auto white balance and we'll go to custom. Oh, in this camera's instance, you choose temperature. And now that's 45. If I go up to 48, let's see how we're matching. You're still a little too orange at 48. So with that camera, we might want to bring it down a little bit, bring in some more of that blue look. Now that's looking a little bit better. And her light probably needs to come up a little bit. And these cameras are totally different cameras. Of course, if you're using the same camera, you're going to have a much easier time matching. So if you have 3 of the same camera, it's going to be a lot easier. You can basically just put in the same settings and you'll be good that way. It takes a little more advanced playing with parameters when you're using 3 different cameras. But here, her ISO is set to 800. We could probably give her a little more ISO and maybe reduce the shutter speed to a lower number. That's looking a little bit better. I always like to reduce the shutter speed if I can over the ISO, because ISO is artificial digital light, and with ISO usually comes a little bit more noise in your image. That looks pretty good. This is looking good now. Now the difference, obviously, the Tail 2 is a much more advanced camera, has a more advanced, better sensor to it. It gets better image quality. So we just have to do our best, but that's looking really nice. And then we go to the wide, and oh, now the wide shot looks totally different. It looks way brighter. It actually looks kind of more natural with the auto settings, but it's not as rich in color and saturation. And so we need to balance out the wide shot. So let's go to our Tiny 2 and let's take it out of the auto settings. Now we're gonna keep autofocus in focus because we're DIYing this. We can't, we gotta keep things in focus. You can switch and try to switch between face and global. Since there's two of us here, you might find a better result with global autofocus instead of face, because it's not sure which face to focus on. I think that's why it's doing what it's doing. And we're at different focal planes. So as you move up, but if you put it to global instead of face, because there's two people in the shot, look, it's not really adjusting as much as we move back and forth more towards the camera, right? So that's something you would do. And the autofocus, that's the auto exposure mode, but you'd want to do that with the autofocus mode too. Now we'll go to temperature here, right? We have auto there. Ooh, now we're getting closer. Let's see what it looks like at that 48. And now let's compare that to Stephen. It's a little better. Of course, I think 48, I think it can come down. Maybe something more like 46. Looking pretty good. And then there seems to be like kind of more contrast. That probably has to do with the exposure. Maybe this is still a little on the bright side. So if we come and take the auto exposure off, and now for me, look at darkened, it got a little more rich, right? There's just a little more, we're down to 300 now. That's looking pretty nice to me, actually, at a 300. We can go up a little bit and down a little bit, like, oh, no. Let's do that. So 400 in the ISO and a 40 here. Looking pretty good. And now I'm actually thinking that, yeah, I think that's pretty good. So I'm using my mouse to click on these scenes, but I can also now, to switch between these three scenes that we have set up, I can press the down and the up button, and look how cool that is. So now that we have all of these set up, here's a final test. Now what do we do? How do we live stream? Well, now that you have this set up, you can now say start virtual camera. Notice if I click on the settings wheel next to that, it tells me the output type, and you can output the program and default, and that's what we want to keep it as. When solutions refer to or use the word program, they mean the program output. They mean the camera switching, which means it's only going to record whatever it's on, whatever camera is active. That is what's going to be sent out your virtual camera, which means that will be recorded. It'll be printed. So when you're doing this manual camera, wherever you have the camera on, like if I forget to switch the camera and I just leave it on my face, we'll hear Veronica's voice in the podcast episode, but we won't see, and that happens all the time. I do that all the time. That's just the name of the game, and we'll get used to it, and we'll get more comfortable with doing our manual camera switching the more practice we get. So I'm going to go ahead and say start virtual camera, as easy as that. Now we have a virtual camera, and it will work as if we had a camera plugged into our computer. It's crazy. And now what we recommend using is Riverside FM. So let's open that up in Google Chrome. Riverside FM is an amazing solution for this because you can live stream with Riverside FM. You can do live workshops. You can invite guests to join your live stream. You can share your screen, your guests, any screens that you share, all of that stuff gets recorded at its highest quality, and it gets recorded on its own separate track. Now, our camera switching, our virtual camera that's coming from OBS will be recorded as one track or one file, one video file. But then we can use whatever microphones we want that we plug into our computer, and those microphones can be what we broadcast to our audience and what we record. And in this way, Riverside will record our live stream at its 4K quality coming from the virtual camera, and then it will live stream a 1080 stream to our audience, keeping our live stream really high performing and snappy so that it can broadcast well, but recording at a higher quality behind the scenes. I love this for a lot of reasons and recommend that you use Riverside, but the two biggest reasons are that this takes care of the file management for you. You don't have to record from OBS and send those large files anywhere and manage all of your files. It stays on Riverside's server. This also saves your computer space and the need for you to purchase a bunch of external hard drives. The other reason I love it is because once you're done with your live stream, then it's as simple as just clicking the edit button on your live stream recordings in Riverside, and you'll go into their editor and you can edit very quickly. You can edit your live stream. And the fact that you've already done your manual camera switching, it saves you hours in the final edit because the camera switching is done for you. And then on top of that, there's all sorts of other really cool features, like the fact that it will create magic clips for you. So you basically can turn one live stream into multiple episodes that you can post to Spotify and YouTube. And you can also have 2 or 3 little vertical video clips that you choose and refine a little bit from Riverside's magic clip suggestions that you put to all the social media platforms. So in this case, we're just going to say record and join a studio. And we want to make sure that, I actually haven't tested this yet, so I'm crossing my fingers. We want to make sure that and we'll say, PSS or Vera, PSS is great. And we're not using headphones. We want to make sure that our OBS virtual camera, notice, now shows up as a camera source. Look at that. And right now it's coming in at 1080p. So we want to make sure, we want to see if we can change that from 1080p to 4K. And then here is where if I had microphones plugged into the computer, which we're going to do in a moment, we could select those as well. And I'll join the studio. So now we can X out of this. And here we are in Riverside. And now I'm going to click on the settings here. And look, my recording resolution was set to 1080p. Riverside does this by default. So you'll actually have to come up here and boost it up to 4K. And then look, oh my, it works. And it was so easy. We're recording in 4K. And now I can actually minimize my OBSBOT center. I can pull Riverside over here if I want to. And I can kind of do something like this is probably what I would do for my live stream. And then I would make OBS chiquito. Yeah. But check it out. Now when I switch my camera in Riverside, or switch my camera in OBS, using the down and up arrow on my computer, it switches in Riverside. So rather than go live, I'll just record in Riverside right now. Riverside gives us a countdown. You'll see it's on Veronica's camera. I'll click back into OBS so that I am here, and we would start our podcast. Hey, welcome to our show. And then Veronica starts talking, so I go down to her camera. I start talking, I go up to my camera. And in this way, I would probably just hover over the two of our cameras. And I would just kind of keep my hand here for the most part. And whenever I'm talking, I press the up arrow. And then when Veronica starts talking, I press the down arrow. And then whenever we're done, recording, or maybe if we both start laughing, or I want to kind of take a break from the computer for a minute, I can just put it to that wide shot that we created. And now the camera switching is being done live. And look at this dynamic, amazing show setup that you have for your podcast. And as I mentioned, now in Riverside, you could pop back over to Riverside, invite guests in, you can share your screen, and then press stop when you're done recording. When you're done recording, it asks you or allows you to stay in the studio, or you can actually go to your projects or go back into your dashboard in Riverside here. And now you can actually full screen Riverside and say, yes, I would recommend this to a colleague. And by the way, speaking of recommending to a colleague, we have a Riverside promotional code you can use, PSS, if you use it at checkout. And if you go to pss.media/Riverside, you can sign up for free. And then when you're ready to upgrade to a paid plan, make sure to use PSS at checkout and you'll save 15%. Pretty awesome, right? So that's it. Now, if I go to recordings, we see our recording that we just made is processing here. And there it is. It's done processing. So now we can, like I said, click on the edit button. And this is sort of the real value of why you might want to use Riverside to record your episodes, because now that I pressed edit, here's my episode, and the quality looks a little lower here in the edit than it will actually look when you export your edit. But now you can edit this like you would a Google Doc, cut out parts of the episode you didn't like, trim the beginnings and the outs of your episode. And then it has all these really cool AI tools some of which are huge time savers, remove pauses, remove filler words, and then there's this one, Magic Audio, that when you apply it, it creates a studio quality sound. It removes the noise, cleans up your audio, makes sure that it's loud enough and broadcast ready with one click of a button. And after you apply it, of course, you can enhance the audio. I like to reduce this to about a 50 or a 60%, I find is the sweet spot with the Magic Audio. A little tip there, and that's it. Of course, you could do all sorts of other things here. This is a fully, has every feature, captions, media, music, all sorts of cuts and effects you can do to create really cool podcast episode. And so now your recording workflow is great. You just had an amazing live show with your audience. But after the fact, you can cut out maybe the Q&A sections. You can cut out the parts that you kind of were nervous and you weren't really performing that well. Cut that out of your episode. You could also make the decision to split your episode up into split your live stream up into 2 or 3 different episodes so that you have those to publish to the platforms as well. So this is pretty cool. And you'll see the camera switching was being done during our episode. And then when you're done, you can export it. Also, what you could do if you want at this point is if you're working with an editor, and all creators eventually, it's an eventuality that we will upgrade to work with an editor. Eventually, we're going to get there. Well, now your editor can just log into Riverside. So there's another huge reason to use Riverside is because there's no file management headache or bottleneck that happens where you have to download files, upload them to a G drive, send them to your editor. You could just get into a regular workflow with your editor. They could pop into Riverside, go to the recordings, and from the recordings, they can download the full quality raw video 4K recording right here from Riverside. And when they do, let's pop it open and evaluate the quality of this. There it is. So there's the full quality that we get recording a virtual camera into Riverside. I'll just kind of scrub through it, let it play. Pretty fast. I can go up to my camera. And in this way, I would probably just hover over the 2 of our cameras. And I've just kind of keep my hand here for the most part. That's a very high quality podcast episode ready to go to all of the players. And what's cool about it is that you have, you don't need to get a camera switcher. It doesn't take a lot of advance. You will need a USB hub like this one that's a little more expensive than just a flimsy USB hub that can support a lot of data coming through all your webcams, so you never run into a problem that way. And you're gonna need a USB hub because you're also gonna be plugging USB microphones into your computer probably, or an audio interface. So you're gonna run out of USB inputs. So you will need to have the USB hub. But now though, we gotta see what the full production quality looks like, because there's one consideration that we just kind of brought up, which is editing and the full real production workflow. And that is to use, obviously, if you got it in your budget, to use 3 of the R2D2s, right? To use the big mamas. And you'll have a really good shot that way, as we can see here in OBS. But then also, how can we record each of the outputs of these web cameras onto their own track so that we can camera switch live to our audience? We can give them graphics and share our screen and everything live to our audience. But before anything touches the internet, we can record the highest possible 4K lossless quality output from each of our web cameras onto their own track. This will make professional editors fall in love with you because they can then manipulate those files isolated separately from each other. This allows them to unpack all of their techniques that they use as professionals, including color balancing, making the shots look nice with each other. That's a lot easier. But they can also hide the jump cuts and be more precise with how to edit and have a lot more control over the edit. And that's the truly professional method of doing things. So we're going to explore that right now. And to do that, we're going to incorporate and replace this USB hub with an amazing piece of equipment, the YOLO Box Extreme.
This USB hub route is so cool, right? I especially love it for DIY creators who don't have a lot of editing time, because by doing the camera switching live, then you just get that program mix, that live performance you did with the camera switching yourself. So you don't have to do the camera switching once you get into Riverside. Your recordings from Riverside are going to be much higher quality than what is actually streamed to your audience. And once you get back to your dashboard of Riverside after your live stream, you'll see that you can click the edit button to immediately open up your project and start editing and cutting it like you would a Google Doc. Riverside has all sorts of cool AI features like removing filler words and pauses, and it will also automatically get to work creating vertical video magic clips for you. So you can choose your favorite, open those up in an editor, and make some refinements to them, make them a little more human. And in this way, a DIYer can realistically only spend a few hours every week getting that live stream that they did broken down into maybe a couple different episodes that you can share on YouTube and Spotify for creators, but also into a couple vertical video clips. With this workflow, a couple episodes hitting those platforms and a couple vertical video clips hitting YouTube and maybe another social media platform of your choice, you're gonna see consistent, impressive growth for your show, without question. And then maybe it would be time for you to upgrade to this YOLO box. Or maybe you're sitting here thinking, come on, let's get to the YOLO box stuff. I've got the cash, I've got an editor, and I wanna see how the pros do it. So let's do it.
Okay, let's unplug everything. So both the Tail 2 and the Tail Air camera have an internal battery and can stay charged for long periods of time. And you could just use these remotely without plugging them into power. But when we're doing long live streams and video podcast content, we want to make sure that we keep it plugged in so we never run into any problems. So this time I'm just going to move the USB cable down to the next one and make sure that it's plugged in. So now it's plugged into power and this guy will just stay on forever. Do the same thing over here. Now, instead of this USB cable going into our USB hub, we're gonna plug it into AC power. Before I did that, in my OBSBOT center, remember, I changed both of these cameras out of UVC mode, just into their regular modes. This camera, without touching it, I'm gonna not really touch it and try not to do anything with it, because in order to readjust any tiny camera, you'll have to do that still through your computer. These cameras don't sync up to smartphones or iPads. So in order to adjust the Tiny 2 or the Tiny 2 Lite, you'll have to plug it into your computer and then unplug it from your computer and put it back into the YOLO box. But that's gonna make sense in a moment. Now let's get the YOLO box set up. Does he always make her kiss the electronics? Creepy. The YOLO box now is how we're gonna do the camera switching. The YOLO box also has an internal battery, and you could charge it and use it completely remotely if you want. So the Tail Air and the Tail 2 camera here and the YOLO box could all be used without plugging them in. The YOLO box is also really cool because we're gonna use an HDMI output coming out of the YOLO box. Notice the 4K, 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 4K HDMI inputs here. With this Type-C USB input, you can plug in a web camera, which we're gonna do as well. The Tiny 2 to illustrate that. But my top recommendation when you're using the YOLO box, as I mentioned, is to use any of the Tail model cameras from OBSBOT, because this box is approximately a $2,000 situation in US dollars right now. So once we get into that category, that price of high production value, you may as well be using the higher quality Tail camera series. I like how here it says electricity. I don't think I did it right. Oh, there it is. Create smart. There we go. And as this very intuitive screen suggests, you can live stream directly from the YOLO box, or you can enter into monitor mode, which is what we're gonna do, because we're still going to live stream using Riverside, mainly because I may wanna bring in guests remotely. I like to have everything recorded in Riverside as well. But the main purpose of using the YOLO box in this professional setting is the YOLO box allows you to plug in a flash drive, which we're gonna do in a second, and then all of your input devices that you have plugged into this will record to that flash drive separately. Now there's other video switching and camera switching devices that do this, like the Rodecaster Video, but the Rodecaster Video, which we love, only records those inputs at 1080p. The YOLO box will do it at 4K. That's insane. And so you can also hook up audio and all sorts of crazy things to this. But what I love most about the YOLO box so far in my experimentations with it is that it's very intuitive, very easy to understand. So I'm going to start setting these cameras up one by one into the YOLO box. There's the Type-C USB input, and I plug it in there. And when I do, it pops up over here on the yellow box. There it is. How cool. You may find that your Tiny 2 cameras will actually reset when you unplug them from your computer and plug them into the YOLO box. They're gonna kind of go back to a more neutral or default position. So it's not ideal in my mind, but you might just have to actually manually mess with the camera a little bit. Luckily though, your color settings and ISO settings and everything that we set up are locked into place, and so it still looks really good and matches the other cameras. This is another reason that I really advise not really using these Tiny series cameras, the Tiny 2 or the Tiny 2 Lite with the YOLO box, but you can. And so I wanted to illustrate how you can. So now we're gonna set up the next camera. Now the Tel Air has a micro HDMI output. Micro HDMI right here. And above that, we have the slot for your micro SD card. So yes, you can record directly onto this camera too. I know, it's amazing. So I like to use these adapters. I find them to be a little more stable and reliable than a cable, but you can also get a cable that is micro HDMI to HDMI. Plug in your HDMI cable, and there we go. And I'm gonna plug it into one of these. Just choose whichever one you like. Just choose one that says 4K. And when I do, that camera pops up on the YOLO box. And now I can switch from shot number 1 to shot number 2 by just pressing on it. Pretty cool. So now let's set up the other camera. This one is the Tail 2. Tail 2 has a full-size HDMI output. Take the other side, find another available slot here in your YOLO box. And when we do, look, the other shot is now there. So now we've got Veronica's shot. And so now the last thing we're gonna do is plug the YOLO box into the computer. A CamLink 4K adapter. We love this one by Elgato. This converts HDMI signal into a USB signal that can be read by your computer. And depending on your computer, you may also need a USB adapter so that it's HDMI to USB-C. And then the HDMI cable plugs in like that. Will come out HDMI output 1. And then the other side of this little contraption that we built here goes into our computer. And we're all set up, good to go. So now when we enter the studio in Riverside, instead of our OBS virtual camera, now we can choose CamLink 4K, which is our CamLink adapter, and go ahead and join the studio. And now notice in Riverside, we have our YOLO box. And whenever I press another shot, we have our camera switcher. So this is really cozy and comfortable. And you're gonna see this in action later when we actually go live. Here's Stephen's shot, and here's the wide shot, and here is Veronica's shot. So my computer's in the way. I'm gonna be moving my computer out of the way of her shot, and we'll be refining the shot a little bit and some things. But how cool is this? So this is really great, but I do want you to notice here that we also see a record button up here, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that and getting the YOLO box set up right to record all of these shots to our flash drive in that 4 full K quality, so that we remember to press the record button here before we go live to our audience in Riverside. This is really cool because Riverside, you'll have this great live stream to your audience, and you may still need the recordings from Riverside if you're going to be inviting guests remotely, but you'll have their isolated recording tracks from Riverside that your editor can use with your full 4K files here in the YOLO box.
Okay, so now Veronica and I are actually gonna go live to YouTube and put these 3 cameras to the test. And this is what it looks like in practice. The YOLO box makes camera switching live really easy and fun, and we have the confidence of knowing that each of these cameras are gonna be recorded separately and ready for us to share with our editor later. By using Riverside, of course, we can share our screen with our live audience, and that screen share will be recorded as a separate file. And we can invite guests to join our live streams remotely, and their footage will get recorded at high qualities as well. If they're using 4K cameras, we'll get 4K quality recordings of our guests. So there's no single best multicam setup, only the setup that fits where you are right now. DIYing, doing everything yourself, start with setup 1 or 2, master that workflow, and get comfortable switching live. Ready to scale or you already have an editor? Step 3 is where you start working like a pro and 10xing your output, getting a much bigger bang for all of your efforts. This is where we're all moving toward with our shows. The best bet is to start simple, upgrade intentionally, and build a workflow that really respects your time. Choose execution over perfectionism every time, stay consistent with your show, upgrade in iterations, and your show will reach the audience it deserves, guaranteed. Remember to comment live stream if you want the complete resource guide with all of the links and gear and pricing from everything we covered in this video. And if you want more hands-on help, come join us at one of our free live events at Podcast Your Way. Signing up is free, the events are free, and you get face-to-face time with us and other creators to ask questions and get personalized feedback. The link's in the description, or go to podcastyourway.com. Now, if you're hungry to learn about microphones and lights, just comment microphones and lights, and I'll send you some resources for those. And now, if you want to see a different configuration of live streaming using Ecamm Live, which is a different software that allows you to add lots of bells and whistles, and also an audio mixing board to where you can do sound effects and treat multiple microphones live, where I set up a complete live stream setup for one of Veronica's real shows.